Hi, welcome back to Fast Recap, and today I'm going to tell you about a 2004 movie called The Girl Next Door. If you like our video, you can support us by liking and subscribing. It's only a few seconds for you. But for us, it's a huge step towards our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Matthew is a typical high school nerd. But one day, a new neighbor shows up, an irresistible 19-year-old blonde. The film begins with a high school yearbook photo shoot, during which the students remember their most memorable moments. This is where we meet the main character, Matthew, who realizes he has nothing to remember from his high school life. Then we are transported to the gymnasium, where Matthew tells us that they have managed to raise enough money to help a student from Cambodia named Samnang attend their school. Next, we are introduced to his nerd friends. They watch through the windows as their classmates leave for the beach. Matthew offers to go with them but is turned down. Then he decides to go himself. Once in the car, he drives out of the school, but a police car starts chasing him. After a short chase, the policeman has an accident, and with his eyes closed with fright, Matthew opens them and realizes that he is sitting in the car and not going anywhere. When he arrives home, he notices a new car near the house next door. Upon entering the house, he sees his parents sitting with friends. They begin to discuss Matthew's enrollment in a prestigious university and his acceptance speech because he needs a stipend, as studying there is very expensive. In the evening, as he goes outside to take out the trash and repeats his speech, he sees an enchanting blonde near the neighbor's new car. He calls his friend and begins to describe her. As he is talking, he looks out the window at the house opposite and sees that girl. She begins to undress, taking off almost all of her clothes, but at some point while he was looking at her, she turns around and he has to hide under the window. When he looks out from under the window, she is gone. But then he hears a sound outside and sees her walking toward their house. She rings the doorbell and starts talking to his parents, after which they call him to come downstairs. And so they are driving down the street, but Denis abruptly stops the car and asks Matthew if he enjoyed spying on her. He starts making excuses and apologizing, but she says that's not enough and wants him to undress. Matthew refuses, but in the next scene we see him standing in just his boxers in front of the car headlights. Next we see Matthew running down the road covered by a child's inflatable circle. Danielle pulls up to him and lets him into the car. They sit in a coffee shop and Matthew asks her what she does. She says she quit her job and wants to start over. Then Matthew asks if she has a boyfriend, to which Danielle replies that she doesn't and says that Matthew is in his final year of high school and is probably partying hard. But when he starts to lie ridiculously, she realizes that he really isn't and says she'll find him a girl to make him laugh and push him to do incredible things. She then slips him a drawing of her. When they arrive at the house, there's confusion between them and he leaves, wishing her goodnight. Sitting in class, he looks out the window and sees Danielle calling him to run away from school. After hesitating briefly, he leaves and jumps into her car on the move. They drive away from the school. Later, he tells her about a guy they raised money for so he could attend their school. Danielle tells him to follow her and takes him to some house and then runs off into the darkness. As he follows her, he sees her undressing by the pool in someone else's yard. They swim and she asks about the crazy things he's done, to which Matthew says that comes first. The school director then notices someone in the pool and looks outside and sees only them running away. Eli and Kleitz are sitting at home. Danielle rings the doorbell and says she's all wet and is she allowed in. While they are watching at a loss for words, Matthew shows up and introduces his friend. Together, they all go to the party. Everyone there is paying attention to them. Matthew's classmate Hunter approaches them. He offers to get them a drink, at which point another guy takes Matthew aside and says he has to leave. But he goes over to Danielle and kisses her. Next, we see Matthew walking through the school. Eli runs up to him. He takes him to the school studio and shows him a cassette tape of an adult film featuring Danielle. After watching a small piece of the video, he turns around and leaves. Eli runs after him, trying to calm him down. Eli tells him to take her to a motel and jump hard on the bed with her, to which Matthew says he actually likes her. He comes home and sees his mother and Danielle in the hallway. They start talking, but seeing her, he can't get that movie out of his head, imagining her jumping on his parents. He can't stand it and screams. Matthew and Danielle enter his room. She says they can go another time, but he replies that they will go today. They go in the car. He, on Eli's advice, ignores her and tries to get her drunk. When they arrive at the motel, Matthew offers to rent a room, to which he gets a positive response. Upon entering the room, the girl lies down on the bed and begins to undress. She starts acting like an adult movie actress, and Matthew asks her why she does that, to which she says that he's the one who wanted to sleep with an actress in a cheap hotel. whereupon she leaves and he runs after her and asks why she didn't tell him, to which she says she liked the way he looked at her and then leaves in tears. After she leaves, we see that Matthew's life is not happy. He looks out the window from class hoping to see Dani, but she's not there anymore. Matthew goes to her house and tells her that he saw the film and lost his head, that she is all that matters to him. But at that moment, he sees another guy come out of the room. She asks to talk about it later and Matthew leaves the house, but turns around and sees that guy coming out of the house. He says his name is Kelly. He asks if he and Dani are friends, to which Matthew says they are kind of dating. Danielle then comes out of the house and says they should go. There, at a table, Kelly starts asking Matthew about the future. Matthew already asks how they know each other, to which he gets the answer that he is a producer and Dani's ex-boyfriend. Matthew tries to seem cool, but Dani can't stand it and goes to the bathroom. At the club, he notices a family friend who often comes to their house with his wife. Kelly calls him over to them and suggests that he buy Matthew a dance. Next, we see Matthew, Klitz, and Eli sitting in a sex education class watching a video. Eli says it's terrible and he would have done much better. Then they walk down the street and see Kelly talking with the girls from the school. Kelly walks up to them and introduces them, after which they leave and get in the car. They drive to the bank where they keep the money for Sam Nangu's visit. Matthew introduces Kelly as a school teacher and he begins to woo the bank worker. When he gets home, he sees Kelly and Danielle getting into a car. They drive off to Vegas for a festival. Matthew, Eli, and Klitz are sitting in a cafe. Matthew says it's his fault. He shouldn't have taken her to that motel, and Eli agrees with him. He decides to follow her to Vegas for the adult film festival. They go inside, and on one of the podiums, Matthew spots Danielle. He walks through the crowd and calls out to her, saying it's all his fault. She looks at him and walks off the podium. Matthew tries to catch up with her, but she tells him to leave her alone. At this point, she meets one of the producers she shot for earlier, and he says she should be with him and not Kelly. But then Kelly walks up and tells him to go away. Matthew comes up to them and says Danielle doesn't want to be here, but she tells him to go home and leaves. And Kelly takes him outside and tells him to stay away from her. But Matthew goes back to look for Dani, and Eli and Klitz stay sitting in the hall. One of the actresses sits down with them, and Eli says they are producers. She wants them to cast her in their movie. Then her boyfriend comes up and finds out they're producers and offers to touch her. Eli refuses and Klitz agrees. But the security guard who has seen them before comes up and says they are just schoolboys. They start to run away, meeting Matthew on the way, who looks at Danielle and Kelly. They say they have to run and run away. But Matthew goes to Danielle and says he knows what she's really like, gives her a piece of paper with her portrait on it, and leaves. In the morning, he is sitting in his room, but there is someone knocking on the door. Turning around, he sees Danielle, who offers to give him a ride to school. She asks why he believes in her so much, to which she gets the answer that he is a fool. They kiss and he leaves. He sits in class and prepares his speech for the evening, but sees Kelly outside the door, who bursts into class and starts yelling that he won't let Danielle go. They walk to the car where the guys from school are already waiting for them. Kelly throws one of them off and they all run away. He takes Matthew out of town and tells him that Dani didn't show up for the shoot and he's in for the money. Then he hits him in the face, but afterwards he apologizes and gives him a pill for the pain. They walk through the woods and he tells him how Hugo stole the idea from him and that the reward he got should be his. So they steal it, and only then are they even. As they enter the house, they go their separate ways. Kelly comes out and calls the police. When Matthew found the reward, Hugo saw him and set his parrot on him. As he ran out of the house, he saw Kelly leave and the police coming. Hiding in the bushes, he called his friends. When they got home, they realized that the pill Kelly had given him was far from a painkiller. They picked Dani up from the house and tried to calm Matthew down on their way to the university application night. Upon entering the lobby of the building, Dani asked Matthew to keep his mouth shut and to pay no attention to himself. But he didn't have much success with that. Approaching his competitor's table, he kissed the girl sitting there and then danced and hugged the director. And at one of the competitor's speeches, he laughed all over the room. When his time came to speak, he realized that he could not read what was written on his cards. He decided to improvise, but in the end, he didn't get the scholarship. Going to the bank afterward to pick up the money for the Samnangu to come, Matthew learns that Keely has already taken it. The bank employee is about to tell the manager, but Matthew begs her not to tell anyone. She gives him until Monday. Matthew runs over to Danielle's house and tells her what happened and then talks about his plan, how to find the money by Monday, after which he goes to Eli and Klitz. Eli agrees right away. Klitz doesn't want to, but they talk him down. Next, Dennis and Matthew meet her actress girlfriends at the airport and return the award to Hugo. They then agree that if they make it, they'll split the money. Before the prom, Matthew, Klitz, and Eli, along with the crew, arrive at Danielle's house. He introduces the guys to their prom girls. As they enter the hall, they draw everyone's attention to themselves. When the teacher asks why they have cameras, Matthew says they are making a video journal. Afterwards, Eli says it's time to set up and they leave. When Matthew stays with Danny, the guys at school come up to them and start asking about the girls. They ask him to introduce them, to which Matthew offers them a movie. The guys agree and Matthew lets them sign contract. But on the way, one of the boys loses it. After leading them to the classroom where the filming will take place, Matthew returns to the hall to Danny, where they dance. At this time, Eli and his team are running through the school to another location. During the dance, a teacher comes up with a contract that they lost, but Matthew says he doesn't know what it is. Then one of the cameramen comes up to them and says they have a problem. One of the actors hasn't been able to make his sword hard, and so one of them has to do this scene. Matthew says he will, but as he was about to leave the locker room, he saw the lipstick mark that Denny left behind. Remembering all the wonderful moments with her, he changes his mind, and then Klitz agrees. Afterwards, they left the school, got into the limo, and began to celebrate. After dropping Klitz and Eli off, they drove around the city at night and made love. Walking home in the morning, Eli called him and told him that the film was missing. Upon entering the house, Matthew saw his parents at the table with the principal and Kelly, who had the videotape in his hands. Kelly asked to speak to Matthew alone. He said it was his idea, and that means the cassette is his. And if Matthew doesn't agree, he will show it to his parents, but Matthew says he doesn't care anymore. When Kelly turned on the videotape, it turned out to be a sex education lesson. Kelly wasn't expecting that. Matthew's parents, along with the principal, supported the idea. Afterwards, we return to the scene where the students reminisce about their highlights and Matthew reminisces about his. Friends Hugo, who was on television, Kelly, to whom he sent a box of cigars, Samnang, who came to America, Eli, who performs in front of the audience, Klitz, and his big debut. The way he paid for his own studies, as well as his lovely next-door girl. What do you think of the movie? Write your opinion in the comments. This is one of my favorite movies that I can watch many times. If you have never seen it, I recommend that you do. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more such videos.